Hi, Dumo. Welcome to Strangers X, and today's episode is Strangers X Dumoluhle because we are meeting you. I'm really excited to have you on here. And thank you so
Yeah.
much for accepting the invite.
No, thank you so much for having me this morning. Thank you. It's good to be here on a beautiful Sunday in Cape
Hmm.
Township. It's a beautiful sunny Sunday. It's a bit windy, but
Yeah.
seeming like it'll be a good Sunday. So
True,
thank you for
true,
having me.
true. Thank you. You're quite the runner. Today we have the Sanlam Marathon
Yeah,
happening. And I'm
yeah,
just thinking like the bright sunny weather is great because like
yeah,
it feels like a good day. Like, it
right.
helps with the mood and keeps you motivated. But the wind also, I'm assuming, would be a welcoming thing for runners because it almost like cools you down as you run
Yeah,
and not just like trying to run in the blistering heat of
yeah,
Cape Town summers. Mm.
yeah, yeah. No, you're right. Or you're right. But you're trying to put me on blast because I haven't been running a long time.
That
Why
was
would
going
you
to be a
expose
follow-up to be like, when are
You're
you signing up for this
exposing me.
marathon? Why are you
You're
not, why were
exposing
you
me.
not there?
You're exposing me. You're exposing me. You're exposing me. No shame. When I need to think,
Uh-huh.
I actually say sometimes to people that if you want to know how I am, ask me
Yeah.
when I last ran. So it's good that you asked me
Oh,
when I last
yeah,
ran.
yeah, yeah,
Because I
yeah.
think it's usually
What's the,
telling of where I
is
am.
it? Is
Yeah,
it?
like I really love Sundays. Most people that know me like know I love Sundays.
Yeah.
I've come to cherish Sundays because I've become very intentional about
Mm-hmm.
slowing down. So I'll
Mm-hmm.
do things that help me slow down. Like I won't do like my laundry in a washing machine. I'll sometimes hand wash,
Mm.
because I just want to slow down. Doing things, finding like little pockets or activities or ways to slow down because I do think there is a case.
Yeah, yeah. I think like I really love the idea of like just having a day in the week where you really slow down.
We've become like maybe I don't know if I have the the empirical data to support it, but it certainly feels like we have become such antisocial
True.
uh
People.
beings, such
Mm.
antisocial people. So
Mm.
like sometimes the discomfort I feel it like in a bus, I sometimes think I
Mhm.
want to greet this person, but like I feel so much angst,
Right? I talk about
you
like when
know.
you sit next to someone.
Yeah, I'm sitting next to someone and
Mm.
I'm thinking, oh, maybe I want to greet them. Oh, maybe I want to greet them. Maybe I want to greet them. I just
Mm.
feel so much angst. I don't know where that comes from, but I
Mm.
certainly know we are relational creatures for sure. And yet, like,
Absolutely.
there's this feels like there's these distances that
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, this is like the perfect segue because like that that's like what you're talking about, this like this this you're recognizing this like distance, almost like this difficulty to connect to the next person,
yeah,
where our nurture as Africans, we're known that when you enter a space, or when you enter a space, the first thing you should do automatically is to greet the people in that space, right? So like even like let's say if you're going to be like sitting on public transport next to someone or people, you
mm,
it's just like common etiquette for you to greet someone. It doesn't mean that you should have a conversation. And so that's why you feel the urge of like, hey, let me acknowledge the person who I'm sitting next to, right? But
mm,
like society is telling us that no, that's weird. Like why you're almost being too familiar, or you don't want to make someone uncomfortable, etc. Like all these things. You almost
yeah,
have to do like this calculation of like, oh, should I or should I not? What kind of person
yeah,
are they? But and so like the whole concept of like a big part of what strangers is, right? Is
mm,
is that like me recognizing how we've become like we where technology has been created, like we have all these social media platforms where we know what people are doing. We share our lives with common strangers, right? We know way more than we should sometimes, but
yeah,
somehow we're strangers to one another, like especially in person, right?
yeah,
And so, like for me, like that's why like it was so important as someone who I love a good conversation. I love meeting people and knowing how we perceive people can be a big barrier to whether or not you get to know someone. Like that's something
yeah,
for me that I've experienced personally, where people see me and they'll be like, I
yeah,
don't know if we'll have anything in common. Like, what exactly are we going to be able to speak about?
yeah,
And But then like those who just see a human and then just be like, oh hey, and then you just organically and you interact, you realize just the beauty of you connecting with the next person. And I
Mm,
guess like I think yeah, that's something like it's a perfect segue for me. Like I know you grew up in well you were born in Zimbabwe, right? Like just tell me a
mhm.
bit about that.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I think I definitely do agree. I definitely do agree with the sentiments that you're sharing there. That like there's that paradox of this thing that's supposed to bring us together,
Hmm.
or has at least has the potential to seems to be pushing us further and further apart. Growing up in Zimbabwe, so I grew up in Bulawayo,
Hmm.
it's a town in Zimbabwe. Um, I wasn't
Town or
born.
a city?
Sorry,
Is it not
but
a
what's the
city?
difference between a town and a city?
Ah, guys, a city is bigger than a town. City is bigger, and then a town is more.
Mm,
A town can be
okay,
like like we can call Mashvingo a town.
okay, okay, okay,
You just
okay,
like see like Mashvingo is a town, but like Bulawayo will be a
okay,
city.
okay,
Just like Harare will be a city. But cities will have a lot more like a much more defined growth point, if that makes sense. So almost like a town is almost like a graduation from like a rural, like you have a village
yeah,
and then you have a town and then
yeah,
you have a city. Yeah.
okay. No, so
Mm.
then I was born and raised a city of kings and queens, as they call it. Komfazi ushaye indoda, kontuthu ziyathunqa. Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful city. Born and raised there to a mother and a father um, who have who have both worked in public service for the longest time. Yeah, grew up in a what's the Elokishin. I grew up
Okay.
in Elokishin,
Yes.
Elokishin called Inketa 9.
Okay.
Um, at the time, I think it was me, my mom, my dad, my mom's little sister,
Mm.
and two of my cousins. Um, and yeah, it was a good time. I remember, I think I grew up around what I always like find remarkable or interesting about my growing up is
Mm-hmm.
I always had a lot of women around me.
Mm.
So I grew up around in a house full of women.
Mm-hmm.
If not most times it was just me and my dad, or most times it was just me,
Mm-hmm.
the male figures in the household.
Yeah.
So, and I think when you're speaking about ideas um, of community and engaging with each other,
Yeah.
not as strangers, I think a lot of things that I value now in terms of going around building communities. I think I learned a lot from the women that raised me, because I've always held this sort of opinion that it appears at least that women have a better hold on um, the the sort of what's the word skills or abilities to nurture and cultivate community,
Mm.
uh, and so I think I really appreciated that about my upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, then
So why do
spent
you think that is so? Like, why do you think that women are better equipped at nurturing and creating community than men?
um, I think perhaps um, hmm, I don't know if I'll be able to complete this thought. I have an idea, but I don't know if I'll be able to. Um,
Yeah, well, I believe in beginning. There's never, I think we're always in the pressure of being able to come full circle, but
yeah,
beginning and acknowledging that this is just the beginning of a thought and
yeah,
like working on it.
yeah,
And yet, and then finally arriving, not just trying to arrive automatically. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. I'm thinking it's something to do with the systems of power that exist, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak. in particular patriarchy. I'm thinking that what the sort of double-edged sword, not double-edged sword, but patriarchy, or it chows all of us, but I think it does so in different ways.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to the identities, it configures for men and women. There's the trope of women being, or there's the script at least of women being these figures that are solely nurturers or community builders,
Yeah.
which I think because it's it's given that thing because it's devalued work, it's devalued. It's not seen as being the primary source of the, not power, but what makes the thing that is the system that patriarchy wants to perpetuate function.
Yeah.
So I think with the devaluation of that, I think in some sense there's been yeah, that's where the thought now is failing to complete.
Yeah.
That I think there's somewhat been with, whereas on the other side, what's happened to men, I think, is the primary identity being that of production, that of productivity and output at all costs, that there's no need for 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 being concerned with community work or community building, that it's the individual that it's important.
Yeah.
Because the individual is the one that produces at all costs. And I think something in their conditions us differently in terms of the abilities that seem to be at a closer grasp or closer reach. But yeah, it feels like I didn't fully, but I hope it kind of paints the picture I'm trying to get at.
Yeah. No, I know. I definitely I hear the picture. You're saying on the one hand, it's almost like well, patriarchy and the system has society, we call it society, has created this notion that, well, women have been, patriarchy say that women are nurturers, and they're the ones who are the primary community builders, right? They maintain community, more like they maintain community. I don't know about creating community, possibly, but more like maintaining and nurturing community. And then yeah, I think more primarily just nurturing and maintaining community, whereas the masculine men have to be their sole function is production and output at any cost, right? Um, and so there's almost like this tug of war, this push and pull. And so, like for me, what I'm thinking of, oh, and also there's a devaluation of this work, right? Where men's productivity and output is way more valued in society, it's still more valuable. It is seen as value, whereas the nurturing and community building that is done by women is not valued at all. All right. There's no, it hasn't been given. And we'll talk about value, we're speaking about economic value, financial value, fiscal value, right? Um, I hear that. So you're saying that you're still coming to terms of bringing it together, right? Like for me, what I'm thinking of is personally, I think that I guess maybe this is a question to you before I answer this, right? Is that I don't think there's anything wrong or innately bad um about or I don't think we should like almost say that, oh no, like we should shy away from acknowledging that women do have that it does come easier to women to nurture and to create community and to maintain community. I think it's important to recognize these like biological differences of what comes easier and what does come, and I'm speaking broadly and generally speaking, and not, of course, saying that no, all women, if you're
mm,
a woman, then automatically you should be a nurturer. I don't think that's
mm,
possible. There's always exceptions to everything, right?
mm,
But we're talking
yeah,
about generally.
yeah,
We're talking about just like in the same way, like with the masculine, not everyone wants to be a protector or is able to
yeah,
and all that stuff and producing productively. We're not saying that. Yeah. So I'm just talking about generally, the
mm,
general notion. I don't think we should run away from that.
mm,
Or even I think we should embrace that. I think the problem it comes in where we do not give value to that community building, the nurturing, and the maintenance of community. And more
yeah,
importantly, is that we don't actually, I think women don't are not given the real power of establishing, maintaining, and controlling community that men enjoy. So like men hold all the power of directing and legitimizing the community, right? Because they'll you more times you find like they'll be the politicians, they'll be the decision makers. They're the ones who define the parameters of what a community is and what it shouldn't be, right? But
mm,
they're not actually involved in the building itself. They can be more prescriptive about the more that the systems of like this is how the community this is how this community should be, but
yeah,
they don't listen to their core community builders. I don't think we see that correlation that we co-create, we co-build this community.
mm,
And I think that it is that dissonance, that lack of connection that we should be speaking to, of like let us actually sit together at the same table and see and draw from these different perspectives that we have and our strength, and then be able to work towards one thing. And also
yeah,
not have them almost like these like blanket roles of like the woman will do this nurturing and maintaining of community, and men are the ones who would decide.
yeah.
I'm thinking of, I don't know if you've watched Handmaid's Tale,
Yes, yes, I
the
have.
series, right? Like you see
Yes,
that they quite very in a very real way how I forget that I'm terrible at remembering characters' names, but I remember that couple, the main couple, the one that main character used to work for a long time, where
yeah,
it was the woman who came up with the idea of the society and these rules, etc., right? So she was an academic, I believe, and she came up with this in the university, etc. And her husband,
mm,
I think, was like a civil servant or something. He was working in government or I don't know if he was a politician or something like that. And
mm,
then because this society that she created, right, she
yeah,
somehow becomes relegated by the same husband who she's the one who came up with this grand idea about
yeah,
how they want to create this society, how they're going to manage and control population growth and address their issues with the lack of the declining birth rate numbers, etc., right, and fertility issues. So
yeah,
she ends up, she loses her power almost, and she just becomes like the very woman who she subjugated through the system that she created. And a man who did not know, and who she taught, is the one now start telling her how to do things and how to run things. And so you see
yeah,
that dissonance, right? Like so well, quite blatantly.
mm,
Um, and I think that's where like it is. Like I think as society we almost like shy away and like of embracing like how there's a sort of like nature has created these things that come easy to us, but
yeah,
in us acknowledging the inequalities amongst us,
yeah,
we're almost like perpetuating the very thing that we're fighting when we
mm,
say that, oh no, when the fight for, oh, I can do what a man can do becomes more louder than no, value what I do as a woman, even if like I'm not saying that you should just stay there, but like equally, right? Of like if I'm capable of doing this thing that society said is a man thing, I should be able to do that. But
mm,
equally so that if I have no interest in doing that, then I should be allowed and it should be valued in an equal manner for me to
mm,
be able to do this particular role of nurturing and rearing, etc., etc. I
yeah,
think yeah, I think sometimes like we don't have that conversation often
yeah.
enough. Yeah.
No, no,
Yeah.
I think I totally agree with that. I think I totally agree. It almost links with something we've spoken about before about how there's the prevalence of the inability to have conversations, you know,
Mm-hmm.
to to be okay with difference, you know,
Yes.
to contend with the complexity of difference
Mm-hmm.
in a really just way, you
Yeah.
know. So it's a very and when you link it to the particular thing you're speaking about, I think that's why I think I've become lately more concerned with, there's the saying, not to be morbid, but they say that the world that is going to be in the where the world will be in 20 years has already been planned, you
Yes.
know. Um,
Yes.
and so worrying about what will happen in the next 20 years is it's already gone, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And I take that to say I've become, with what you're talking about, I've become very concerned with how do I ensure in my personal capacity that I change or at least influence the way little boys view the world. Because I think
Mm-hmm.
a lot of it now is perception. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
not only like information is definitely present on the things that you're talking about, you
Yeah.
know. But I think it's because ideology works from a very young age, and I think
Mm-hmm.
it's something that's become very important to me to find ways and think of ways, how do I intervene as well at that point? How can we find ways to intervene in changing the narrative that we exist in the world? Because I know personally in my journey that there's a what you're talking about, these things that you're talking about, I may have been aware of when I was 15 or 14,
Mm-hmm.
but the 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 poison that is very deeply in there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So those ideas of dominance, those ideas of power being about control, you
Yes.
know, of manipulation, of gaining at all costs,
Mm-hmm.
you know. There's no way that community will have a seat anywhere near any of those things, you know. So I've become very much concerned with finding ways and thinking about how to intervene at not only young boys, I think particularly to young boys, young black boys to me,
Mm-hmm.
but I think just at a younger age, a change in the ways we view the world, you know.
Yeah.
Because like you're saying, there's so much media around us that is constantly working against what it is that we're talking about, or at least perpetuating what it is that you are describing, you know, that inability to recognize um, the collaborators, to recognize equally, or to open spaces, effectively work together, you know. Instead, like you said, it's the continuation of the paternalization of just the way um, the world functions, you know. It's like, for example, the other day we were joking about, I won't mention the names, about particular political parties, you know, that we are so entrenched in certain ideas of having this paternal figure, you know, that is so strange at times. You know, you think it's 2024 and you see these things manifesting, but it's not only political. You think even in religious spaces, sometimes I've seen, you know, the things you see grown people that you would assume are of full will, you know, doing certain things that are very questionable. So, and that is not a lack of information to me. That's not a lack of information. That's an ideological a difference, an ideological functionality that is something that needs to be worked at. So when you speak about that that sort of incongruency of knowing that women should be recognized as the co-creators, or as more than just wanting to take space, and yet it doesn't happen, because, or at least when it does happen, it's almost tokenistic, you know. So yeah, I think that is something I've taken to thinking about lately, man.
Mm, so I'll thank you for those. I love the examples that you've chosen, right? I think that's such a very real thing, and that this need for paternalizing authority,
Mm,
or parentalizing. I think like whether it's a
mm,
man or woman, we tend to
yes.
parentalize those roles, right? Maybe I don't know. Like, do you mind just like expanding a little bit of like why is that even extended to like political leaders? How does it like why? In what ways do we paternalize like a political leader or a religious authority,
Mm,
a religious leader?
yeah, it's the it's the Yebo Baba. I joke.
Uh,
It's by that I just mean it's in the language, man. I think
mm-hmm,
the language that we often hear um, ourselves use in describing these political leaders or religious leaders,
mm-hmm,
you know, the and then that then influences the way we carry ourselves around these individuals. You know, you see this that it's more than a respect thing. It's more than a due regard. That there's almost I'm hesitant to say, but for lack of a better word, there's almost a worship. You know, I
mm,
mean,
mm-hmm,
almost like I think it's that thing of a cult of personality. You know,
mm,
of that there's a it's not the ideas of that are being propounded. It's not the ideology that is being or preached or being taught. That
okay.
it's the it's the individual. That's why when when that individual is questioned or is found to be doing um, wild things, there's still a willingness to protect or stand behind, you know.
Mm-hmm,
Um, there's the most recent one with the church with the documentary that came out with the that popular
pastor.
pastor, you
Mm-hmm,
know, and there's still people who are and it, it's that willingness to be blind or willingness to close off
mm-hmm,
uh, any it's yeah cognitive dissonance I guess
yeah,
is the word, you know.
yeah,
And so that's not only religious, I think political as well, that
yeah.
there's a
Almost like a blind worship and a blind allegiance. You almost
yeah
like you almost like let go of you being a reasonable person, or even just being you like just like your simple logic of like no, something is wrong here. It's just blind loyalty, blind not even blind, but blind and like un unshakable allegiance
mm,
to this thing. But I think I guess that that's like the psychology of it all, right? Is that
yeah
what you find is about you find about charisma and charismatic people,
mm,
charismatic leaders, and
yeah
people, politics and religion are two things that are that people very deeply they're very personal, very intimate things, and that people latch onto. It
mm,
gives you purpose, it gives you reason, and so it's almost all not it's bigger than this like individual that you even see. It's almost like you see it as like your pathway to salvation,
mm,
to it is a solution to everything else. It's the hope and the promise of like what lies behind this or after this
yeah
is perfection, is perfect life.
yeah
Although I must say that I don't know if this is what you're saying, you can correct me, right? Is
mm,
I don't necessarily think that it's a bad thing to parentalize like um a political leader or even what do you call it, a religious leader. I think it comes down to just not uh, and, I think anyone, for even your own parents, actually, let's even go there to our own parents. Like
Yeah,
just because someone is your parent, it doesn't mean that they cannot do no wrong, or that you
yeah,
cannot correct them, or that they are, they do not have flaws.
yeah,
We're all human, and so we all have flaws, including ourselves, right?
yeah.
I think what is often the case, what's always a problem is when you place anyone, no matter what their station is in society,
Mm-hmm.
when you place them on a pedestal where it's almost like they cannot do no wrong, and where you are not open to recognizing and saying that I can disagree with this person, or this person can mislead me, and so I need to always be reasonable. I need to be able to, I should have the wisdom, just to and I should not lose sight of being able to question whatever this person tells me. Like, even if
Yeah,
someone loves you, it doesn't mean that they will always lead you, that they cannot lead you astray, that they cannot, you always have to maintain that. And even with yourself as well. Um, I think that's where that's where it becomes unhealthy. That's where it becomes
mm,
dangerous. We when we when we place people on pedestal, we make them perfect, you know.
yeah,
Um, I think like that's like a conversation that definitely like we need to have more of
mm,
of that anyone is subject to corrections. Anyone
correct.
can be wrong, and that I should be able to, to be able to say like, something is not right here, and
Yeah,
be able to turn away from that.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But to not, I don't know if I'm pushing back, but to,
Please push back.
I don't know if it is pushed. I think it is. I'm not sure, but I think it is. The thing I think about parentifying, especially I think in the contemporary world that we live in, I think parenting itself is shaky already. Parenting
Mhm.
itself is shaky in the world that we live in.
In
So to
what ways?
transport
Do you
that,
mind just
okay,
like, yeah, what is that? Why is it shaky?
it's shaky to me because it appears to, and I think this is what feeds what you're talking about, this idea
Mm-hmm.
of um, that a parental figure cannot be wrong, that they cannot do, um, that they cannot misstep, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think some of the things that feed that is, at least in my perception, that there's a warped view of the way we we practice parenting or view parenting. Parenting
Mm-hmm.
is viewed or practiced as, for the most part, around tenets of control,
Mm-hmm.
uh, of almost, dare I say, dictation, you know, where I've come to be of the opinion that there are certain things that parents have a say over that are
Mm-hmm.
very wild, you know, you know,
You cannot just
for
say that
the
without an
child.
example, please.
Are very wild. For example, that a parent can have a say over whether or not a child can get a tattoo, for example.
Okay.
A tattoo, and see, I like the example of a tattoo because if we're not talking about health, if you're not talking about it harming anybody else, this is
Mm-hmm.
an autonomous decision, right? This is something
Yes.
to do with a person's individual body, and
Mm-hmm.
that someone else can dictate
Yes.
whether or not someone can do something with
Mm-hmm.
their body is a
Mm-hmm.
very, all because they're the parent, and all
Mm-hmm.
because there's this control, and that control
Mm-hmm.
is very real. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying that control is wrong in its
Okay.
whole sense. No, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying it's wrong in its whole sense. I'm saying that there are parts of it that are very questionable to me when it comes to things about particular aspects of autonomy,
Okay.
And so when you then take that and place it on public power, for example, or more wider expanses of power like religious positions or
Mm-hmm.
political positions, I think again I think that's how people are able to just give. There's like a willingness to, I won't make the decisions. Like often there's that sort of thing of that people practice democracy only every 4 years. That's
Yes.
the only time that they practice their autonomy. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that they are engaged in the decisions that impact their lives. Because
Yes.
I think once a person votes, there's this, I'm done.
Yeah.
It's over to you. And I
Uh-huh.
think we're primed, some of us
Until
even
the
are
next
primed.
5 years, I will be back. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think I would suggest that that's something that is primed by this idea that I'm still wrestling with, I think, about how we go about parenting in a way that encourages autonomy, but still raises a human being that has grown in a safe environment. Because that's the other
Yeah.
thing about the control that a parent
Mm-hmm.
provides. You know, it's
Yeah.
about tailoring an environment that allows one to be protected from the ills of the world, but to
Mm-hmm.
do that in a way that doesn't take away the autonomy of an individual, such
True.
that as you walk in society, you are able to actively, if you find yourself in a political space, actively
Mm-hmm.
exercise that autonomy, even if there is this central figure. You
Yeah.
know, so I don't know
Yeah.
if I push back or we aligned at some point at the end there.
um, I think you're speaking to a certain aspect. I think we align in the sense that I won't even say. I think this is almost like a different point.
Mm,
Um, yeah, I think you were expanding on my point. I don't think you necessarily. I
yeah,
think you, if anything, you brought up almost like a different point. Um, I don't know how I feel. I guess maybe I'm thinking about the specific example, and I'm showing the traditionalist in me, the
yeah,
conservative in me, um, about like the example you chose about the tattoo and how a parent can say no, right? I
mm,
automatically thought that when you're a teenager, I'm assuming like this is what I'm assuming we're talking about a child who's like younger than 18, all
mm,
right? Because if you're over 18 and you want to tattoo, bruh, like you're an adult, then do
yeah.
you, right?
But
But if you're under,
even then, Nako, it's shaky, but that's not the point.
yes, even then it's still shake. I mean, trust me, I know that, right? But because
Yeah,
even like just like saying like, oh, 18 is but one could argue that it's quite an arbitrary age, right?
yeah,
People are even saying that with the way society is right now, we should probably
yeah,
push the age of majority to 21, like in countries
mm,
like for instance like here in South Africa where the age of majority is 18 years, right?
mm,
Um, anyway, that's all the other conversation for another
yeah,
day.
yeah, yeah,
Uh, I think the first thing that came to mind was, when you're a teenager and younger, you don't really think about sometimes like the repercussions or like of your actions and etc. And I'm just
mm,
thinking like, imagine now like a 14-year-old just saying like, I want to get a tattoo on my face, right?
yeah,
Now, listen, it's your face, right? It
yeah,
really is your face. You're the one who has to like deal with it. But as a parent, I'm
yeah,
just going to be like, listen, as much as like I'm all for you making decisions for yourself and your body and
yeah,
um we still live in a world where perception is so important,
yeah,
and you having a face tattoo is going to warp, like it's just going to make life harder for you, and I love you. I don't want you
yeah,
to have a difficult life. And so like
yeah,
most of the things, like if you have healthy parents, like if you have parents who are actually who really do love you and are trying to parent you in a healthy way,
yeah,
I think it's warranted where they're concerned about they don't want you to deal with unnecessary challenges in life. And so that's what I would think of as a parent, of like, hold off about
mm,
it. Like personally, I think that this is just a phase, and you
mm,
might think differently, and it's harder. I mean, yeah, sure, you can do laser treatment and then to remove a tattoo, but like you don't have to go through that. You
yeah,
really shouldn't have to go through that, right? Like
yeah,
think it through properly. So that's what I was thinking of, and I guess maybe I'm hyperfixating over the example that you gave.
mm,
And again, it's a whole other conversation for another day. You know what? No, I'm not going to go into that. It's just going to go off on a
yeah,
tangent.
yeah.
You
No,
know,
uh-huh,
yeah. But I hear you. Like I hear you in terms of like the parenting of this control thing is a very real thing. I think we agree. We definitely do agree on the
mm,
sense that there's this idea by a lot of parents where it's like almost like I own you. You're my
mm,
priority. And so you hear these things of like when a parent is is chastising you, you know, they'll be like, I'll take you back where I took you from, you know, I brought you into this world, and I can take you out of it, like
Yeah,
saying things like that, like that's
yeah,
very weird.
yeah,
I think that's
yeah,
very weird. It's a very weird thing to say, to a child. Also, you can't do that. Like, you honestly cannot take them back to where they came from. But anyway, um, like, it's impossible. But
yeah.
I think that's definitely it. Like, almost like this ownership, almost as though you see a child as property, and that's where, again, like, we think that's something definitely that we need to address. Um, but yeah, like, I love, like, you know, I'm intrigued with how you mentioned that, you know, you grew up around a lot of women in your life, right?
Yeah.
And how that has shaped who you are and the work that you're trying to do with young Black boys and men, right? Like, that's some of the work that, you know, some of your own reflections on your life and how on your upbringing has led you to doing this type of work. Yeah, so if you don't mind, just like continuing with that, like, what does that look like when you say that, you know, you're interested at doing this work with young Black boys?
Um, no, that's a good question. That's a good question. Now you're making me talk about my ideas. We can spend the whole day here. Um, yeah, I think
You don't have to
uh,
speak about a specific idea, but I think just like more the thinking of, like, what is, like, you know, why did you why why did you see, or why do you see a need for there to be work to be done with young Black boys and men? Yeah.
okay, 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 okay. I mean, with that, um, I think it's from experiences, experiences that have, um, or rather, I think I came in, yeah, when I first came to university, when I first
Mm-hmm.
came to university, um, I remember I was of a particular disposition. Um, an individual that I often now say that I wouldn't like to meet. Like, I would not like to,
Why? Who was this
I would not,
Dumo? Mm-hmm.
I would not like to meet that guy. Like, yeah, I would not. Him and I would butt heads on a lot of things. And I might be able to give him grace, but he certainly wouldn't give me any grace in
Yeah.
that conversation. So with that, I think coming into university, I had and a lot of and a lot of it was a particularly violent posture towards life, to be honest. Violent towards any sort of difference
Mm-hmm.
or anything I didn't understand as being part of the world I knew, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And with that, fortunately, the friends that I made early on, which to me it was not by coincidence, you know, I needed to meet these people, I needed to meet those people, were people that questioned me and probed this posture I had, you know, and questioned it. And as problematic or as violent as some of the views I had were, I was given a grace, you know, given room to grapple and and begin to realize some of the blinkers I had on. And I
Mm-hmm.
think what that then did was, as I began to realize these blinkers, I would realize them with my friends, you know, realize them with the male figures I had around me,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and recognizing how much of that, how much of similar experiences we had, you know, how much unsatisfactory experiences we've had of childhood, for example,
Mm-hmm.
um, and often speaking of wishing there was more or wanting more from childhood, feeling this shortchangedness of childhood, you know, and I think with that, um, and I think of myself as a very empathetic person, you know.
Yeah.
I think with with that in mind and recognizing how much in the now, how much violence is propelled by men in the world. You know, there was a cousin, and I don't. I hope I'm able to capture it nicely. That there was this empathy I started to feel growing more and more. Because I don't want to sound cliche, you know, and say that like men that perpetuate violence are shouting for help. That's not what I want to focus on, but that I could recognize, especially with young men, this dissatisfaction, this lack, this need to be pumped with something, you know. And I think as well, just during that process, the books I've been exposed to have definitely, or I've exposed myself to, have definitely pushed me towards caring about some of this work, you know, recognizing that like there's certain things that I can try to change in the world, and in particular, I often think it's good to start at home, you know. And home feels like this experience of being a boy, being a man, being a black boy, being a black man, existing in the world that we've lived in. So trying to, I think some of my concern was motivated by that, but also I think deeply it's a selfish thing as well. Selfish in the sense that I wish there's certain things that I wish that I sometimes I think it's selfish in that I wish I had someone that cared about this for me. You know, I wish I
As
had
in,
someone.
you wish you had this person for you when you were younger, or you wish you had
Yes,
this person right now?
no, when I was younger, yes, precisely
Okay.
when I was younger, I was exposed to people that cared about this, you know, that cared about talking about boyhood, about
Yes.
manhood, that cared
Uh,
about thinking about this, giving us the language, you know.
yes.
Um, and
Mm,
so it's deeply personal and
yeah,
selfish on that part, you know.
yeah. I don't know about selfish. I don't know about
Maybe.
selfish. Sorry, I have very strong views about the use of the word selfish. I think, like, I think sometimes we misuse the word selfish.
Okay,
It's almost like misplaced. I think like
okay.
I wouldn't call what you're saying selfish, but rather, not even self-interest.
Mm,
Um, you wishing that you had come across people or someone who gave language to what you're going through, or were doing the work of
yeah,
unpacking and navigating, or navigating boyhood to manhood, right?
mm,
I don't think that's selfish. My understanding of selfish is self-interest to the detriment of others, and I don't see
yeah,
any detriment.
okay.
I don't see the detriment here, and so I wouldn't call that selfish.
Selfish. Yeah,
I'm intrigued in the sense that, like, what changed, right? Because you're saying that, you come to uni, so you're from Bulawayo, you grew up there, you did primary, high school, everything, and then you come here to Cape Town, to UCT, and you start studying in first year. You are who you are. What what changed? Was there, like, almost like, was it a person, was it a group, was it like something that you came across in your studies? When did this shift move where you got into the space, or you got exposed to people who talking about and doing this work of navigating manhood, boyhood and manhood?
to be honest, I think the navigating boyhood and manhood is something that has happened probably early this year.
Mm.
But I
So
think
that's like 5 years
the
later, right?
yes, but I think the earlier sort of point that you pointed out there, that I was referring to, I think definitely did prime me to get to this point.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I sometimes joke that I think thing with my parents that maybe they didn't intend to do, but unfortunately because of who they are, is they told me to think. I don't know if I don't know if that I'm explaining that nicely, but because they're both in public service and academics as well.
Yes.
I think in as much as we grew up and were taught to a particular way of life, I think with the posture that they sometimes, I think, naturally exuded, there was a willingness to be open to hearing different, like something different, something anew. And I think that's the nature of academia. I mean, like, you can't do things in a vacuum. You're always open to. And so with that, I think meeting the people I did early in university, I think in as much as I had that posture that I was talking about, because there was the grace that I was then afforded, there was a willingness to open my mind to learn. I was in my like violent posture. I did have the desire to learn, and I think that was helped by, meeting people. When you meet people and you connect with people, you can't lie to your connection. You connect with people, then you realize, oh, there are differences. Oh, and I was taught that this difference is bad. I was taught that this difference is something that separates us, that makes you less human, that makes you and I unable to connect. But we've connected. We're connecting. I'm interested in getting to know your fullness. You are interested to get to know my fullness. And yet there's this thing I was taught that it's supposed to be a thing that somewhat barriers that. So then coming and fast forwarding to the now, I think it's changed. It switches to it, that primes me to be concerned with boys, black boys and black men and that journey now, because I've been able to meet like-minded people, people who are concerned with this thing, that that are wanting to do similar work, that are concerned with thinking about ways to change our experiences for the better, you know. Yeah.
Wow, that's like incredibly powerful and exciting. I know these chats that are always common that pop up every once in a while on Twitter or X. And my one friend, she I know has very strong views of like it is not our job as women, and especially as black women, to to do the work of healing and not curing, but of healing black men, or men in general, of the traumas and the issues of patriarchy. Like, men need to come together themselves and sort themselves out. Like, this is work that should be initiated and done by men alone. And so she has like very, very strong views about this, right? And yeah. And so, like, for me, I think I definitely do agree that, with anything, like, when you need to take ownership, or if you want to do something, if you want to do any transformative work with yourself, it primarily has to begin with you. No one can do that work for you. So I absolutely do agree with that. But I also do agree that, some of the work has to be done in community, all of us collectively. Like, as women, we're doing the work, we've been doing the work, and we are doing the work ourselves. I think generally, again, I'm generally speaking, I'm not saying everyone, so please, I'm not like attacking. Also, I think because society has made it easier for us, like, it's easy for us to talk about emotions and to talk about challenges because society accepts it. We can be vulnerable. And I think the thing about transformative work is like it's highly vulnerable work, right? And society hasn't made it easier. Patriarchy hasn't made it easy for men to be able to open up and speak vulnerably, even in intimate spaces, even, whether it's with their loved ones, including friends, etc. It's difficult for them because it's frowned upon. It's seen as you're emasculating yourself, right? But I think part of that work has to be done together, all of us. Like the work that we're doing of unlearning what patriarchy has said about us, about womanhood, about girlhood, about our femininity, etc., is, and so you have to undo that on your own, because like the psychology, you have to undo that psychology of like how you think about things and the world and yourself relative to it. But part of that work, but an important aspect of that work is also has to be done in community. It has to be done collaboratively between men and women, because
Yes,
we do share a space, a world, right? And so how do we then create, there's work to be done in terms of how we relate with one another, and you cannot do relational work on your own. Like
yes,
relational work can only be done in relation, in community, in engagement. And so that's what I think about that. So it's really, really, like I'm really excited hearing you speak about this, and the fact that you're even saying like this is relatively a very new space you're in, where you're being more intentional about this work and having met like-minded people like that. I'm assuming,
yes.
are these also fellow men? Are they like people of your around the same age group? Are these older men or younger men? Like what? Yeah, what are the dynamics there?
Yes, these are also men of my age, similar, not similar upbringings, just, but yeah, they are men, black men, and I think, yeah, I mean, I often say nothing happens by mistake or
Mm,
coincidence, and definitely meeting them has definitely helped. And I think to your point on the work needing to be some of the work needing to be collaborative, yeah, I think that's a very very important point there. And I think that's why we often fall short even with like the solutions that we have for problems in life, in our lives,
mm,
like you're saying, even with the girl child, um that that it has only gone so far. It
yes,
has done a lot, but it has only gone so far
so far.
because it has got to a point where I think where collaboration hasn't done enough
Mm-hmm.
as what the individual was doing, But I think it is difficult because it just seems like the battle of the sexes just keeps getting heightened and heightened and heightened. And that men, there's this in particular, I can speak to the experiences of men in terms of things like the red pill movement, where there's where men are able to group into these silos to and almost make women an enemy,
Yeah.
uh, and that to get those people to be willing to collaborate, it seems very difficult. But I think
Mm-hmm.
it's a must, it's a must. But that's in the extreme, But even in the just in the sort of more leveler playing field, I think um it's difficult, like we said in the beginning, having difficult conversations is difficult because we I don't think we have the language. Most of us
Yeah.
are not equipped with having the language of having these difficult conversations that
Mm-hmm.
we are talking about, that um because they are very painful, difficult conversations, Uh,
Mm-hmm.
how do we have them in a way that does not enact the same violence that we are trying, like you said, that we're trying to avoid, that we're trying to ameliorate, and I worry a lot as well because it just feels like the 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 overwhelming majority's posture
Mm-hmm.
is is one that does not seek to meet people halfway or to
Mm-hmm.
understand.
Mm-hmm.
There's there's a there feels like there isn't a willingness to on
Yes.
a large scale to understand, Um, and of course, I think that has definitely might have something to do with the individualistic
Mm-hmm.
nature of the world that we live in, and that
Yeah.
is perpetuated, that is encouraged, that is rewarded, you
Mm-hmm.
know, um, such that to have those conversations that man, to ensure that the girl child needs to prosper and be safe in life, men need to be involved in this process. That for the boy child to to be a fully functional human being, a well-adjusted human being, that the whole community needs to be involved in the questions of the ills, you know. But I think it's difficult as well, I think, because I think we don't have the we appear not to have the acumen to do that with ourselves, you know. I think we don't know, for the most part, it appears we are distanced from ourselves before we're distanced from our communities, you know, in that we don't know how to sit with the differences and the complexities that exist within our own capacity, personal
True.
capacities as exist in the world, such that there isn't a strong affinity or ability to maneuver those spaces when you're engaging with another individual on matters that may be contentious, you know. I think we've spoken before on how we don't know how to disagree as people, you know, that it's okay to have different points of view. It is okay.
It's also normal, right?
It's
Like
very
we don't
normal.
see the world the same. Yeah.
We shouldn't be trying to, you know, we shouldn't be trying to be monolithic in any form or shape. And yet, when faced with those differences, we immediately villainize, we immediately
Personalized.
bastardize, personalize, and that those are some of the things that make it difficult for us to acknowledge, not only acknowledge the value of community in this work, but to actually let community do the work it needs to there.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, no, thank you so much. I think we can like, you know, you bring up a very good point about, the lack of what awareness and difficulty of disagreeing. Um, I think we've equated politeness with being agreeable. Um, and so we think that when you disagree with someone, it's almost like you are telling that person that I do not like you.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
not what it is. And
Yeah.
disagreement doesn't mean, I think also like, disagreeing doesn't mean that we should insult one another, that it should be rude. It also doesn't mean that, fundamentally that, you cannot have a common ground. Like just because you disagree on one thing, it means that, you completely forget about everything else that where you meet at. Like obviously we'll all have our boundaries or what is it called? Our deal breakers about the things that, like it's important. Let's say, for instance, if you have very strong political views that, let's say someone has very strong political views that you think are fundamentally important to you, that you disagree with them on, it's understandable that you be like, you wouldn't necessarily want to be acquainted with them, right? Um, uh, but I think for the most part, just generally, I think we need to learn to disagree with what is it? To disagree respectfully, man. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like disagree
Yeah.
respectfully, and that's okay. Like, and both of us can always come back and say, I had a change of mind, or could you please explain this? I didn't, I'm actually intrigued. What is this? Or like, why do you think that? Or even
Yeah.
just say, I honestly think that you should, give this a bit more thought and leave it at that, and that's okay. Um, but be that as it may, I think like we can go on forever. I think I'd love for you to just like end off on what would be what would be your message to a young black boy out there? Let's say an 18-year-old or a 20-year-old, a young black boy in Africa. Yeah, what would you, navigating boyhood and transition as they transition into manhood, what would your advice be? It could even be to a young Dumo.
Yeah, I think I'm going to cheat. This is cheating, but that's the only way I know. The poet in me is going to cheat and read a poem.
Please do, please do.
Not mine. It's not my poem. Yeah, because with the minute you started asking your question, I like, yeah, 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 yeah.
Thought of it.
It's a beautiful question. This is a poem by Kolega Putuma.
Of course.
It's called Meteor or Masculinity. When they ask you what do you want to be when you grow up, say sensitive, soft, aware. They will mistake you for grown when you grow up 2 feet ahead of your time. When they ask you what makes you a man, say feeling. Some days you will feel like the night sky, vast and endless. Sometimes you will feel the weight of expectation trying to box you in. On those days, look up and remember, what makes you a man is everything that makes you human and spirit.
Oh, oh
That is.
wow. That was beautiful. That was
Thank you.
beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, colleague, as well, for giving us those words, for sharing that. That's incredible. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. I think like that's like the perfect way to end this, and it's definitely not, a one and the first and the last time. I really do think that there's so much more we need to explore. So we'll consider this as part one. Thank you very much for joining us today. Dumoluhle Mazwemzini Moyo. Yeah. No, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Take care and cheers.
Been lovely. This has been lovely. Cheers.
Cheers.